Hello, boys and girls. Let's work on history now. We're going to be working on this timeline, and I'm going to first show you how to put it together. So the first step is going to be to trim off the bottom of the second page where it says cut here. You're going to cut that off. That way when the two go together and you fold this over, it won't cover up your hole punches. Then you're going to line them up and put some tape. I'm going to put them up here so you can see me do it. So you're going to line them up right here and overlap it a little bit. If you want, you can trim that little bit of an edge off right next to the timeline, but you don't have to. Just line up the lines and line up the edges of the paper. And then just put a piece of tape right there, a couple pieces of tape. If you don't have tape, I can help you tape it when you bring it in on Friday. And there you be. So let me look at my camera and see. Hey, look at that. Okay, I'm going to get closer. Okay, so it's taped together so that when you put it in your binder, this page will fold up like that. And it'll fit nicely in your notebook. We're not calling it a binder anymore. All right, so there's your timeline. So let's go through these periods and times in history and fill this thing in. As you can see, there's places where the timeline is blank. By the way, don't forget your name and date. Name and date. Name and date. All right. So, the very first thing about 4000 BC, creation. So let's look at the timeline. Creation. We don't know exactly when this happened, but about 4000 BC. So write creation on that first line. The next thing to happen was the fall of man. When Adam and Eve sinned and they were thrown out of the garden. We don't have an exact date for that, so that's why there's a question mark there. The next thing that we have on your timeline is Noah and the flood. So you could write that, or you could write Genesis flood. So let's go back over to our timeline and look at it. So you see where it says 2500 BC, 2500 BC, right here. Write Noah and the flood, or Genesis flood on there. The next thing to happen was the Tower of Babel. That's when God sent people, he confused the languages, but he caused them to spread out over the earth and begin to form nations. So the nations were dispersed. And the date for that? 2178 BC. BC means before Christ. So as we're getting closer to Jesus, the numbers are going down. So you see here is 2500. Now it's only 2100. The next thing on our timeline is Abraham. And he is in 2091 BC. And then Moses in 1446 BC. If you get confused or you get behind, you can rewind the video and fill in those numbers. So there's a lot more that happened in these first years, but this is all we have on our timeline for right now. And the next biggie thing that happened is Jesus coming to the world in the year 0 AD. We talk about this every year. AD doesn't stand for after death. It stands for Anno Domini, which means the year of our Lord in Latin. So Jesus goes on that line. Let's go back over to our timeline and look at it. Right here, 0 AD. Jesus the Messiah, or Jesus was born, whatever you would like to write. And then in this box right here, we're going to write the focal point of history. It was up there on the timeline, it said that, but let me write it on the board for you. Because Jesus is the most important thing in all history. So focal point means where everything focuses. Sorry, guys. Here you go. The focal point of history. He is the most important thing, and his coming to earth and dying for us is the focus of all history. So write that in the box, right underneath the cross that's there on your timeline. So it's going to go in this box right here. And you see how the arrow points toward the cross from all the things that happened before, and the arrow points back to the cross for all the things that happened since, because all of history looks down to right there where Jesus was born. So the next item on our list is the Bible was completed. So the last books of the New Testament were written, and the Bible was completed in 65 AD. And then we go on to one item that's on the timeline that isn't in our pictures in class yet. That's the fall of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, remember the Romans were in charge when Jesus was alive? They were the ones that crucified him. So the fall of the Roman Empire happened in 476 AD. Write that number down for you. 476 AD. That's Roman Empire fell. And then you see, actually there's two places. You see where these little lines are? That means it's kind of a break in the timeline. So from 0 over to here is a lot shorter than it looks because we took out a big bunch of time that we don't have anything to write down for. But during this time that we don't have a lot of events, we do have a period of time called the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages. And this is when the monasteries were keeping the Bible alive. They were the ones that cared for and maintained the Bible. So in that box, you're going to write Middle Ages. Let me see where this is going to fit. Middle Ages, monasteries, and you can print on this if you would like, because this is like a map timeline. It's not a piece of writing that you're doing. Monasteries kept the Bible. Oops, you spelled it right. So that goes, Middle Ages, monasteries kept the Bible. You can pause the video, but let me show you where that goes again, and then I'll come back right there in that little box. You might have to write underneath because I probably didn't make the box big enough. So from here, when the Roman Empire fell, all the way over to here, life was very difficult. People didn't go very far when they traveled. People stayed in their cities, in their towns, their villages. But the monasteries were the ones that kept the Bible alive. So the next big thing that happens in history is the Magna Carta. And we learned about that last year in our history book. So you can put the year 1215 underneath Magna Carta on your timeline. Then about 100 years later, a man was born named John Wycliffe. And he and some other people began translating the Bible into English. At the same time, other people were translating it into French and Spanish, but we're focusing on English because that's what's the beginning of our American history. So you see up at the top, the Bible translated, John Wycliffe, 1384 is about when he was, 82, 84 was when he was translated. So right, 1382. Then the printing press was invented. See, this picture is of a man operating one of the first printing presses. And a Bible was printed on it, but we're just going to put the invention of the printing press, 1456. So under printing press, put the date, 1456. Again, if I'm going too fast for you, just pause the video. And then after that, in 1492, we had a couple things happen. William Tyndale was born, but before he could translate the Bible, we have to move over here, Columbus discovered North America. So on the line above 1492, put Columbus, North America, right there. Above 1492, right there. Then Martin Luther and the Reformation, 1517, 1517. Where's that boy? There he is. Martin Luther. He was the one that first broke away from the Catholic Church. And he translated the Bible into German, actually. So on this line right here, under Martin Luther, write 1517. Sorry, that date wasn't on my timeline on the wall, so I'll put it down here for you. 1517, Martin Luther. Then in 1535, we have another translator, William Tyndale. Those dates you see there are when he was born and when he died, but in 1535 was when he finished his translation of the Bible, another English translation. At the top of the timeline, above all these people's names, and the important thing about all of this is that for the first time, the Bible was in the hands of the people. They could read the Bible for themselves and know what God was telling them to do and how he was telling them to live. So this one here was translated, but the copies were written by hand by his followers. Then, not too long later, another, 60 years later, 70 years later, somebody invented the printing press, and suddenly we went from books being written by hand to books being able to be produced in large numbers in a very short period of time because they could be printed. And we put things in a copy machine and 100 copies comes out in 2 minutes, but not in those days. In these days, every copy would have had to have been written with a pen on a piece of paper by hand. So now we have another different translation of the Bible, and now this one could be printed on the printing press and given to lots of people. So in this box up here, we're going to write something very, very important. Let me back off here so I can get some whiteboard space. So you're going to put in that box that has the 2 arrows at the end of it, the Bible. And you can print this, you don't have to write it in cursive. The Bible in the hands of the people. because it's still in the hands of the people. It's still going on. So put that in this box right here. The Bible in the hands of the people. Super, super, super important event in history. And we actually have one more Bible to put on our timeline. Go back over here. The Geneva Bible. This was the Bible that was actually approved by the Queen, as it says, by the English Queen. So this is the Bible that people could read legally without getting in trouble. Those other translations, if you owned one of those Bibles, you could be in big trouble. So this date, 1620. Sorry, not 1620. 1560. 1560. Skip that one. 1560 for the Geneva Bible. Geneva Bible, 1560. This one right here. 1560, right there on the timeline under Geneva Bible. And then here at 1588 is where we are now. We're going to be beginning with chapter 19 in our history book. This is the defeat of the Spanish Armada. So on that last line about 1588, you're going to write the defeat of the Spanish Armada. And you're going to learn what that is next week when we begin reading that lesson. It was another miracle that God did for the British people, for the people who would be the founders of our country. So the defeat of the Spanish Armada goes on those last two lines about 1588. Then there's one more box to fill in. This little box right here. And this is the time of the explorers. So beginning with Columbus and a lot of other guys all through this time period, Drake and Cabot and many other people were exploring the world. So we're going to write in that box, Age of Exploration. So I'm going to write that over here so you can know what to put. Whoops, sorry guys. Age of Exploration, that's a P. That goes in that box underneath the Bibles and things. So while God was providing the Bible for the people, the world was being, the new world was being discovered. So Age of Exploration goes in this box right here. So until we had the Bible for the people to read, God kept the new world hidden. Nobody knew it was here. And then about 100 years later, once the Bible was started getting printed on a printing press and being able to be given to the people, in the hands of the people, God allowed North America to be discovered by Columbus, and the stage was set for the founding of the United States of America. So over here, final thing for this, on these two lines, I want you to write what you think is significant about this time. Something about God plans all things for his people, or God has perfect timing in history. Because all these things happened in order to set things up to have the founding of the United States. So right here on these two lines, write a title for this. We've written up here, history is his story. It's God's story, not man's story. But over here, I want you to write your thought about this great timing of God.